Welcome back from the ad break matrix. If you've just joined us, we are going through your exam guide to assist you in preparing for your upcoming exams. If you are someone who's constantly running out of data, then this next competition is just for you. Waza Matrix brings you #WazoWinner competition, where 2 lucky viewers stand a chance to win 2 gigs of data. So what are you waiting for? Hop on over to our Facebook page and enter the competition. Well, enough talking from my side. Over to you, Sia.
Right, thanks Luni for that. Guys, this segment we're looking at some tips for you to practice for your paper 1 exam. I know that we all study differently, we have different ways of practicing, but these are just general views of what is it that you need to look at. So these are just general tips for everyone to try and adopt them as you are preparing for your paper 1. So let's just jump right into it. Now, the very first tip that we are saying here is you need to practice the skills that you have learned in the earlier grades. The very first skill, guys, is factorizing. Now, when you talk about factorizing, you know we have different types of factorizing. It's your difference of 2 squares, it's factorizing a trinomial, it's factorizing by grouping, and lastly, it's factorizing by taking out a common factor. So you need to please know the differences between these things. Difference of 2 squares, it's a perfect square minus a perfect square. So that's how you then know that it is a difference of 2 squares. A trinomial, it's 3 terms, as tri means 3. And the leading term is always your x squared. It might have a coefficient in front, but look at that. Grouping, you take things that have common factors and put them together. But remember, your signs always need to be correct. So you don't take something and leave a minus outside or leave a plus outside. And then the last one, taking out a common factor. If there is something common between 2 or more terms, you take out that thing that is common and then work it out using division there. And then the second thing is solving equations. When you talk about solving equations, you know you can solve equations firstly by factorizing or using a quadratic equation. And a quadratic equation is found in your information sheet, which we're still yet going to talk about. Then the last one is graphing. When you talk about graphing, guys, you know that when we looked at the first question, we said there's inequalities that you need to do. At times, you need to be able to graph your inequality. You need to be able to graph your functions that you are given and interpret them. So those are just the things that we are trying to bring to your attention. And then also, you need to revise and learn facts about each topic. What this means is you need to make a summary of notes. Guys, maths is also a learning subject. I know we always say you need to practice, but there are definitions that you need to know. There are concepts that you need to know and link them to formulas. So please make some notes in terms of summaries of what you understand about a certain concept. The following point will be you need to familiarize yourself with the formula sheet. Now with the formula sheet, guys, I can't stress this enough. The formula sheet needs to be your friend. As soon as you get to the exam room, detach the formula sheet and put it on the side. Although you know at the end of the exam you need to leave everything that you found there in the exam room. But just detach it, put it on the side and work around it so that you don't always need to be going back to the end of the question paper to look at the information sheet. And then in the information sheet, you know some financial maths concepts that are there. If you are solving for a number of terms, you need to be introducing things like your logarithmic functions. So please just have a look at those and try to link them to the correct formula according to the information sheet. You need to also break down the sections into manageable parts. What this means is you trying to study everything all at once will not assist you with anything. You need to make sure that you break them into parts that you can understand. Break them according to links that they have. For example, if you're talking about laws of exponents, exponential functions, and logarithmics. So that's one section on its own. So you group it according to that. That is manageable because it's all talking to exponents. So that's really what I mean, and that's just one example. You can break them into sections that you can definitely manage. Then also, you need to use colors and highlighters to group some similar ideas together. And then you need to also be able to talk to another grade 12 learner about what you understand in terms of each topic or question. Now let's explain this. You know, the more you talk about something, the more you will understand it. Let's just make a typical example. For you to learn a song that you just heard for the first time, you need to listen to it over and over again. And as you're listening to it, you need to be singing along with it. So meaning, as you're singing along to it, that's when it gets in your head and you can then sing the song without it being in the background. Similarly with what we are talking about here. Talk to a friend who's in grade 12. If maybe you don't have any friends, we make sure that the people that you are in the same class with, talk to them, guys. You don't necessarily need to have actual friends. You can just have people that you are studying with or that are in the same class as you, and talk to them about ideas that you understand and about questions that you understand. And then also, I know that this is something that most of our teachers tell us, to use past papers. Past papers, the whole point of using past papers is to apply what you have learned. So it's not necessarily to say you're just going through questions and you don't know what you're looking at. You are applying everything that you have learned into the past papers, because exactly that's where you're going to need to apply it. So please make sure that you do a lot of past papers. And when you're doing past papers, you don't need to do from question 1 up until question 12. No. You can just do question 1 and 2 of all the question papers, understand it, go to question 3 and 4 of all the question papers, understand it, 5 and 6, like that, until you are okay with your understanding for the exam. And then the other thing that you need to also look at here will be, you need to plan how you are going to answer the question paper in order to boost your confidence. What does that mean? You can start with the topics that you find easy. Now let me just give everybody some tips here. You know there's some reading time in the exam. That 10 minutes, you need to go through the whole question paper, look at questions that you find easy by looking at them. And those are the questions that you're going to start with. And then go on to questions that you are not so sure about and try them out. And then lastly, end with questions that maybe you think you find difficult. And what that will do is it will make sure that your 3 hours is used wisely, because by the time you get to the questions that you find a bit difficult, maybe you will be left with an hour. Because if you're doing easy questions, it means you're just going to be sailing through those questions because you understand them. So please make sure that you plan your time and form a scheme in terms of how you're going to answer those questions. All right, guys, so those are the tips for you and what you need to try and do in order to prepare for paper 1. So now let's look at a question in specific that surprisingly last year's grade 12s actually found to be problematic according to the diagnostic report. So let's just have a look at that question. So the concept is from number patterns and sequences. So here a few notes for you to please make sure that you know. You need to recognize the difference between a sequence and a series. So a sequence, you know, we normally use our semicolons because it's a term after the other. And with a series, we are normally adding the terms together. So that's what I want you to please look at. And then lastly, you also need to know how to identify the sequence and the series that are there. So you know, with an arithmetic, we are talking about the common difference, which is showed by D. With a geometric, we're talking about a common ratio there, which is R. And then with a quadratic, we are talking about 2 differences, where one of the difference forms an arithmetic sequence. Now, in specific, let's look at a question that we actually found that was in sigma notation. Now, the question said evaluate. Now, let's just talk about this first before we actually do it. Guys, when a question says evaluate, it means you need to look at what concept is it. So here they're saying we must evaluate a sigma of something. What that means is you need to add, because that's what sigma means. So here you will need to first expand the sequence that we have, and you can already see the sequence is n squared plus 1, which makes it a quadratic pattern. There is no straight formula to find the sum of quadratic patterns, so you will need to expand all the terms and add them manually, please. So that's the main thing that you need to please note here. So let's just do the question together. So here, I'm just going to go to the next slide. All right. Now here on the next slide, for you to expand this, the n is equals to 3, means that the first term is at n is equals to 3, making it 3 squared. Okay, let me just erase that. Making this 3 squared plus 1, and then the first term will be 4 squared plus 1. The third term will be 5 squared plus 1. I'm just stating them or expanding them going down so that there's enough space. And then the following one will be 6 squared plus 1. And then 7 squared plus 1. And then lastly, it will be 8 squared plus 1. So what this means is the very first one that I have there will be 4 plus the second one there will be 16. So my bad, not 4. Instead, it is going to be 9 plus 1, which is 10. The following one will be 4 squared, which is 16 plus 1. That's 17. Plus the next one will be 26 plus 37 plus 50 plus 65. And then you will just need to use your calculator to add this. So what am I trying to say here? This is a quadratic pattern. Quadratic pattern means you need to expand the pattern, right? Because there is no straight formula to find the actual sequence. So you expand number 1. Number 2, you add them manually. And then lastly, you write down what the answer is. So you can just use your calculator to add the values that are on the board and find your answer. So that's it from me. We're going to go to an ad break. But before that, let's just go back to Looney, and I will see you guys after.
Thank you so much, Sia, and thank you, Keta. Guys, we are going to take a break, but before we do, don't forget to hit us up on Facebook, Was a Matrix, as well as on our WhatsApp line. Send us through your questions. Talk to us. How are you preparing for the exams? How are you feeling? Just let us know, and we'll communicate on the socials. So let's take a quick break, and we'll see you straight after this.